How are you, friend?
I'm doing really well.
Oh, this is so great. So, we are here to talk about the most amazing, awesome thing. Your new book.
My new book.
Exceptional Maggie Chowder. Woot woot. Before we start, let's do a couple icebreakers.
Okay. I love an icebreaker.
What is one of your favorite childhood books?
I would definitely say Anne of Green Gables. You can actually see Green Gables behind me. Yeah, it's a forever favorite. I also have a tattoo. I can't show it to you right now, but I have a Anne Shirley tattoo.
So, okay. So that's a book you really love. I get it. That's dedication when you get the tattoo.
It is.
Okay, number 2. What is your go-to sweet or savory snack?
I really love popcorn. I also really love nuts with chocolate chips in them. I have that probably like 3 times a week where I'm like, I just want something that's like both, a little bit sweet and a little bit salty, nuts and chocolate.
All the things.
Yeah.
Yes, please. And number 3, this one I think is probably my favorite because we both are children of the 80s. Mm-hmm. So you and I both came of age like in that 1990s sort of animated superhero time. And a part of Maggie Chowder is this beautiful superhero kind of comic story, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. But there was a show when we were kids called Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Do you remember?
The best. It was the best.
You remember the intro song?
Yeah. Captain Planet.
There we go.
He's a hero.
Gonna take something down to the whole thing. But I'm sure I can imagine both of us just watching it being like, yeah,
good. Yeah.
1, 2. So obviously in the Exceptional Maggie Chowder, it has elements of nature and it has diverse characters and of course the superheroes. And so it made me wonder if you, or maybe even Maggie, had to be a Planeteer, which character would you be? So just as a reminder, for those who have not watched Captain Planet, there were 5 Planeteers: Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, and Heart. So who do you think you would be?
I would want to be Heart because didn't he have like telepathy? I'm pretty sure he did.
He had like a connection with the animals, like he could talk to the animals.
Yeah. And he could prevent his mind from being read, like with his heart ring. I feel like as a kid, I did not think that he was the coolest one, but as an adult, like I think he might have been the coolest one. And he was the empathetic one, like the one who, they couldn't call Captain Planet without him. I think him. And Maggie, I think she would be probably Earth, because like Kwame was like really into. Besides like making earthquakes, planting things and taking care of the forest, which is totally Maggie's thing.
That is totally Maggie's thing. So we'll dive a little bit more now into it. My name is Diana Opong Perry, and I'm chatting with my dear friend, Renee Beauregard Lute, author and mom extraordinaire, about her new book, The Exceptional Maggie Chowder. And I've read the book. I really loved it. I think I would have loved it even if it wasn't yours, but the fact that it's makes it extra special. And my daughter, my oldest 10-year-old Eva, has read it, and I think it's really lovely. But tell everyone what The Exceptional Maggie Chowder is about.
Oh man, I have so much trouble with this question because it's about so many things, but I guess I'll start at the beginning where Maggie is really into this comic book character named E-Girl, the exceptional E-Girl, who she's a woman, but she was raised by eagles naturally. And she's like kind of a forest ranger superhero. And so like all of her friends are like Ranger Danger. He's an actual forest ranger. Like Grizzly Bear is kind of like a bear man who also helps out in the forest. And Possum Sauce is her best friend. So Maggie's really into these comics, and throughout the whole book, you'll see the comics, and they kind of reflect whatever is going on in Maggie's head or in the situation. So Maggie has this great life. She's living in Washington, and all of a sudden her dad loses his job and says, you know what, though? This is actually really great because now I can follow my dreams and my passions and become an actor. And this means they're going to be moving into a tiny little apartment, and Maggie is like, it's not really my thing. And she struggles with it. She lives with her younger brother, Aaron, who's autistic, and her mom as well. And her mom has to get a job at a grocery store, and like everything is just an adjustment for Maggie. And originally Maggie thinks, well, my little brother Aaron is autistic. He has trouble with change sometimes, so I'm gonna like step up like e-girl and help him out, but like he's actually fine, and Maggie is the one who needs helping sometimes.
Yeah, he definitely goes on an adventure
Yes,
emotionally.
he does. Yes. Yeah, so there's that, and then there's just a lot of other stuff. The dad's in like a web series, which is like a modernization of Lyle Lyle Crocodile. Erin makes a very good friend at occupational therapy that Maggie is not super into. There's Comic Con and a costume contest, and her cranky grandmother comes to stay with her, and her best friend LaTanya, while Maggie's going through all this change that she perceives as really negative, LaTanya's dad suddenly gets a coaching job with the Seahawks, and they get to move into a really big house, and Maggie sees like this stark difference between like my life is getting really bad and her life is getting really good. And so it's a little bit about that friendship and how friendships last and keep going through things that could be kind of challenging.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I loved that. What do you think with all of those different complexities, all those different pieces, what would you say inspired you to write this book, this story?
A few things inspired different elements of it. So originally, I had the idea for Maggie. Her dad loses his job and they have to move from a house to an apartment. And that's because we used to have a house in Barrington, Rhode Island when we lived on the East Coast. And when my husband got a job out here in Washington, we sold the house and moved into an apartment. And it's such a difference, like going from I wouldn't say a lot of space. It wasn't like a big house, but your own space to somebody else's space that's maybe smaller. And I had some cranky feelings about just living in an apartment for a couple years. And so that was when I started, like, how can I, in fact, the apartment in Maggie Chowder is like very much the apartment that I lived in Issaquah. Then Aaron came about after Simon, my son, was diagnosed with autism. And I had searched for children's books and adult books where there were characters who were autistic. And the book wasn't like negative or pitying or anything like that. But unfortunately, I did not find a whole lot of books like that. There's some great ones by autistic author Sally J. Play. She wrote the Someday Birds, which is great. But I found a few others that were like geared toward middle grade students. And I felt like it was about a sister or a brother, and they had a younger sibling who was autistic, and that child was viewed as a burden or an annoyance. And like the book was always about like, this is how I deal with my sibling. And I felt like that, especially coming out of like, okay, my son's diagnosed, like what's next? It was so disheartening that was like the perception in all these books. So I wanted to write an autistic character like Aaron, who like he's good. And when Maggie thinks he might not be, like he is, he's better than good.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually one of the things that was really lovely. We both have sons with neuro that aren't necessarily neurotypical. Mm-hmm. We have children that don't always maybe fit the norm. And that's something I think that has been a part of our friendship that I love, that we can connect on, because we can kind of get those hard days, but also the concern of how those kids, those types of people can be viewed. And it shouldn't always be negative. It shouldn't always be bad. And I love that Maggie thinks her brother is just incredible and amazing and celebrates him. She's worried about him, I think, like any good big sister would be, but the focus isn't on, like you said, the burden of his autism. It's like his superpower, which is something I learned from you, which I love. And I really feel like that shines in the book. So the book is set in the Pacific Northwest, and Maggie talks in detail about her environment and even shares facts about blackberry bushes and slugs with people in her life. How much research went into that and other aspects of the book?
Some research went into the like Pacific Northwestern atmosphere stuff. And even though I did a bunch of research on the animals, especially like the slugs and the Douglas squirrels, when the book was going through copy editing at Albert Whitman, I would get notes from the copy editor that were like, actually, the small black squirrels that you see are not Douglas squirrels. They're this kind of squirrel. So let's say this instead. So I feel like I learned in the process as well.
That's very cool. I didn't know that was part of, I mean, that's great. It should be. But I don't think I realized that that's part of the publishing experience, is that they sort of help make everything make sense and fit.
Yeah.
character. Oh, that's
What's
neat.
so funny, the biggest thing was when I was writing Maggie, there's a scene that takes place at the Seahawks practice facility. And the whole time we've lived in Renton now, there's been this Denny's, like the diner right across from the Seahawks practice facility. And so there's a part where the parents are like, we're going to be at the Denny's right across from the Seahawks practice facility. And they like demolished that Denny's in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. And my husband was like,
Stop. They demolished Denny's?
did, yeah.
It's been there forever.
I know. Okay. And Zach mentioned it. He's like, I was driving by and like, it's not there anymore. And then the copy editor rather, like emailed me and said, ooh, so we did find that there is no longer a Denny's there. Do we want to just say a diner down the road? And I was like, that is very specific and accurate. Good job. That's good copy editing.
Yes, that's incredible. That's so good. I love that. So I mentioned this just a minute ago that we're both moms of kids who are neurodiverse and get support through services like speech and occupational therapies. Do you think that inspired you to create Maggie's 4-year-old brother, Aaron? In addition, obviously, you just mentioned that Simon, your son, is part of that. But do you think through the therapies and seeing, again, like the beautiful benefit and the community that you can create with that impacted the way you decided to portray the character Aaron in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think OT has been one of my favorite therapies for Simon. Like he's a sensory kid, so he needs a lot of like climbing and jumping and running, and like that gives him a place to do that. There's this awesome gym at his OT place. And I wanted to give Aaron that as well. There's a scene where he goes to OT and Maggie goes in with him, and the occupational therapist is going over like, here's a calming thing that you can do, Aaron, when you're really upset. And later in the book, Maggie uses the same calming thing because really, like, we could all use some tools to help calm down.
We could all, Renee, especially right now, everybody, we could all use some tools. That should be the takeaway. We could all use some tools to calm down.
Yes.
Right now. I love that. I actually think that's one of my favorite things about OT is not only have my kiddos learn tools, but I have too, right? Yeah. Like, oh, okay, these are the things that I can use while I'm helping them.
Yes.
Use their tools to be more like okay with things. I love that. So with most books, there are edits and revisions and copywriters, as I'm learning. And once you submit to your agent, so how do you feel in that process? Is it exciting? Is it nerve-wracking, easy, or hard?
It is. I would say it's exciting. Sometimes it's nerve-wracking. The most nervous I get is like if a book has been accepted for publication and I'm working with an editor and she says, here are some big edits I want you to make, and then I make them. And I really enjoy like making revisions like to somebody else's specifications. It makes it somehow easier for me. And I have a really great editor on this. Her name is Christina. And I knew that her recommendations were going to make this a much stronger book. And so I was like, okay, I'm like ready. And you get to go like visit old friends in the book that you wrote. But it's always nerve-wracking to send it back after you've made the revisions. Cause I'm like, what if I totally messed that up? And she's like, ooh, we've actually changed our mind. This is not good.
That's cool though. And is that a long process? Is that something that takes a long time, a little time?
A pretty long time. I think our last edits were like made in April. And that's after Christina's edits. She's my editor. Then it would go through the copy editor at Albert Whitman to like pick the little things like the Denny's detail. Or I always do something with like dates and ages where like, I think the date in here was like something happened on a Monday, but I already said it was going to happen on a Sunday. And the copy editor caught that. It's a pretty long process. I think we started revisions sometime last September, maybe August or September, and then finished up in April. So.
Oh yeah, that is a long process. That's incredible. Books are, I'm not a published author. And so this is a new process for me that I've learned through you, which has been really cool to see sort of the steps one has to kind of go through to get to this point of being published, which is really cool. So one of the things that I love about this book is that it has two universes. There's Maggie's life in the real world, and then there's the exceptional e-girls world. And both, like you said earlier, really complement each other. And I was wondering, how did you create those comics? Did you do any of the art?
No, oh gosh, I'm not an artist at all. Not a visual artist anyway. So I really like comics. I've always enjoyed like the DC comics, especially the ones about like the girls of Gotham, like Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. And I love graphic novels as well. And so I thought this would be really cool and really fun to do. And then I realized I had no idea how to do it. And so I just kind of Googled it, like, how do you make a comic script? And there's actually there's not like a template. There's no like set in stone thing you should do. And so I think I found like an old Stan Lee comic, and I just sort of used his format for like writing the comics. And then, they were just a script at the end of my chapters until Luna Valentine, who was hired as my illustrator by Albert Whitman, made them real comics. She did a great job.
She's a really lovely artist. Can you tell us a little bit about Luna?
I don't know a whole lot about her. I know she lives in England, and she is a very cool person to follow on social media. She's lovely. I've reached out to her. I think originally when I found out who the illustrator was, and said, I really love your work. Because like the first thing you do if you have an illustrator is you just like stalk them on the internet. Like, what do they do? What does their art look like? And I was so excited when I saw hers. So I reached out and said I was so excited to work with her. And she said, yeah, me too.
That's cool. So that's something we talked about earlier, just in our conversations while you're writing this book, that you don't get to pick the illustrator. Is that correct? Is that standard for most books?
Yeah, that's standard. I think there are like author illustrators who go into it like illustrating their own stuff, but for just plain authors like me, you don't pick. So it's always like really exciting when they let you know this is your illustrator, or when you start to see the first sketches. Like, I think I was texting you the images of them as I received them.
No, it's incredible. So it's in a way you're like building community through the process as you get to work with all these really cool people. Because this isn't your first book. You also wrote some other books. Is it okay for us to talk a little bit about that?
Of course, yeah.
So prior to this awesome Maggie Chowder book being published, you had 4 books that were published. And those were the Winokur Wallace series.
Yep.
And that was with a different illustrator and a different publishing company.
Yeah. And
obviously a totally different story and a different experience. But do you feel like there's any similarity or commonalities between these 2 books at all?
I would say a young girl moving to a new place and not being excited about it is probably the biggest commonality of Winokur Hates Paris and Maggie Chowder. And that they're both big feelers. Like Winokur had big feelings and Maggie has big feelings.
Why do you think it's important for you as a writer to write books that show kids, especially young girls, having a myriad of feelings and not just being boxed into happy, whatever stereotypical little girl ideal there can be in the world of books?
I think it's super damaging the way that we sometimes tell kids, like, hey, like, perk up, be happy, calm yourself down. And frankly, I'm guilty of that too. I have an 8-year-old who will be like, look, we're in Disneyland. And she's like in a bad mood. And I'm like, be in a good mood. We're in Disneyland. But you can't just tell somebody to feel differently. Like, that's not a thing that you can just force yourself to do, especially as a child. So as somebody who also has really big feelings, I wanted to make it acceptable and like, it's okay to be upset.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the takeaways that I definitely got while I was reading Maggie Chowder, not just as a mom, but I was like feeling along with her. There are many moments in the book I would text you and be like, I did not like that person. That person, no. I think that would actually be the reason why I couldn't write a book, because I would start writing a character and I'd be so mad at them I couldn't keep going. Do you have a favorite character in the book?
Oh gosh, I really love Aaron. Like, he's just a really sweet, interesting kid. And he does remind me a little bit of Simon. I think I did pull some of his personality traits from Simon. I love Maggie, of course. And then in the world of E-Girl, I think probably Grizzly Baird. He's just a good character.
Yeah. I'm excited to know if there's going to be a little bit more comic stuff, because we only get little glimpses, because we don't get like a full, how would you describe it? Like in the book, it's not like you don't get a full comic, right? It's like, what is it called? Like just a scene?
Yeah, or like a comic strip. Like rather than the whole story, you're getting just the one chunk.
Yeah. And so will there be more, do you think, e-girl stuff, either on its own or in another book?
I hope so. I mean, I've already outlined a sequel, and I would love to write that book. I would love to do an e-girl graphic novel. We'll see if the book sells well, then I'll be able to write a sequel. Originally, like you're in the bubble of like, I'm writing this book and now I'm editing it with my great editor and I have my awesome agents and like we're just a circle of best friends making art. And then like I think we had brought it to my editor like, oh, and I'm also interested in doing this. And she said, yeah, we have to wait on sales. And I'm like, oh, this is a business. Like we're not just best friends hanging out. I totally get it. So it's been a really positive experience, and you forget about the whole thing that it's like a job and you need to like sell the books.
They need to make money. Oh, that's really funny. But I love that. I love that you get so just into the creative process that you forget about the business piece. That I think that talks a lot about your passion and the experience you've had. That's awesome. That's really cool. Okay. So I was listening to an author interview a while back, and it got me thinking of this question specifically for you. So when you're writing, do you work linearly? Like, do you start from the beginning with the story unfolding through to the end?
I do. I think a lot of authors don't do that. For me, yeah, it's really hard to jump around. I had tried a different app or something like years ago. I think it's called Scrivener, where you can, and it's for people who can jump around and write different scenes and then insert them in different places. That is not for me. I need to be able to write from the front to the back. And then usually by the time I get back to the beginning, I'm like, oh, these characters are totally different. Like I need to fix this, but I can do it that way. Whereas jumping around, I feel like it would make it really hard for me to see where I was starting out early and needed to change the characters up.
That's cool. That's easy. Okay, neat. What would you say is something you learned from writing this book specifically?
Oh man. That's a great question. All right. So the mom character, sometimes she's tired and sometimes she's a little grumpy with her kids, specifically Maggie. And I feel like I gave myself some grace there. When her mom comes home and she's like, oh, like I just need a minute. And she's like, Mom, you got to answer this question. And I want to do this. And And she's like, give me a minute. And Maggie doesn't stop. And she's like, I said to give me a minute. And I feel like I say that a lot.
Okay, that is exactly one of the things I wrote down when I was reading it. I wrote, Mom Heidi coming home and being tired and needing a minute. So relatable.
Yeah, because we need a minute. And it does, I mean, she's a great mom. I think she's an awesome character. And so it like makes me feel better. Like, it's okay that sometimes I'm like, guys, I need a minute.
Yeah.
Because Heidi did too.
Yes. Okay. So if I could, I want to share with you a couple of the other parts that I loved. Okay. So I loved in the early part of the chapters, we meet LaTanya's family, who's Maggie's best friend. And one of the things that LaTanya's mom says is, if daddy has a dream, then we all do, because family members support each other. Mm-hmm. And I remember just stopping and being like, yeah, I love that. And I feel like you have that because your husband is so supportive. Your family is so supportive of your journey into being an author. But they have to create the environment for you to have time to write, right? For you to have that minute.
Yeah.
Was that inspired by that a little bit?
Yeah. And I think about my husband too. He makes video games. He works for 343 and makes Halo right now. And I've realized sometimes I'm not like super supportive in that I don't ask him questions about it because I don't really play a lot of video games. And I realize like, like he's kind of living out his dream here and doing this really cool thing. I need to be more vocally supportive of it. And he's always been really, really vocally supportive of my stuff. Yeah, and I mean, just the support that I know that our kids need. Maddie, sometimes she wants to be a horseback rider, and so we did that for a while. And sometimes she wants to do plays, and so we're doing that. And it's just, I think all of these things would be impossible if you don't have a supportive family, or a family who says like, okay, we're going to get behind you on this. For LaTanya's dad, he was trying to get hired by the Seahawks, and this would be like a drastic change for their family. And LaTanya's mom, I feel like she was just right there with it, and kind of has the whole point of the book just in that one sentence. Like, we support each other. If one of us has a dream, that's all of our dream. Because in Maggie's family, like, her dad did have a dream, and the family changed a lot to support it. And Maggie was not quite behind it at first.
Yeah. No, I love that. There's the great juxtaposition of Maggie and LaTanya's stories and how they intersect later are incredible. Okay. I don't want to give too much away, but one other piece that I loved outside of Maggie and LaTanya's bond and friendship is Maggie goes through some big changes in the book, which you've already talked about. And there's a moment where something happens and her dad and mom talk to her about forgiving herself. Mm-hmm. Another moment where I put the book down and was like, whoa. I don't think that's something that little kids, but especially little girls, are told is okay. Mm-hmm. To make mistakes, to fail, to have good intentions, to have everything go wrong, and then be able to not beat yourself up forever.
Yeah.
And forgive yourself. What inspired that interaction?
I think I have always wanted to hear that. Like, it's okay to forgive yourself. Actually, it's necessary to forgive yourself and move on, because you can't move on if you're going to think all the time about like, oh, that thing that I messed up however many months ago. And I'm totally like that. Like, I don't even know, 6 months ago, I took a poster off Simon's wall and like just full on ripped a chunk out of the wall because I took it down too quickly. And I think about that like once a day, which is maybe like too much for a small hole in the wall that can be easily fixed. And so I feel like, like we need to tell 12-year-old girls that like, forgive yourself and move on from it. Because, I mean, Maggie makes a pretty big mistake, but it ends up okay. And she's not going to be able to move on and do the things she needs to do if she's stuck on it.
Absolutely. Okay. Final question. What do you hope people take away from the Exceptional Maggie Chowder?
I hope they take away that it's okay to have big feelings, big negative feelings even. That supporting your family members, even when their dreams are like a little bit goofy, like they want to be a crocodile actor, it's really necessary. So like, deal with your disappointment, absolutely. But make sure like you're supportive of the people in your family and the people you love. And I hope they just have a lot of fun reading it. It was so much fun writing it, especially the comics. I loved writing Maggie, but the comics were something that I had never done before, and it was just a really cool experience.
Yeah. So let's talk about where, when people can buy the book, and I will definitely share information in the on the screen so that people know where they can go. But we want this book to sell so Renee can have her best friend experience and make the second sequel.
You can buy it at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, Powell's, which I love. Really, go to your independent bookstore and say, I want to buy this book, and like they'll order that for you if they don't have it on the shelves. You can buy it pretty much anywhere, which is cool.
Awesome. Well, I would say everyone go pick up a copy of The Exceptional Maggie Chowder by Renee Beauregard Lute. It's a really great book, and we talk a lot about big feelings, but there's a lot of laughter in this book as well. There's a lot of joy and some really good, important lessons. And I think it's a book that you could do as a summer read aloud with your kiddos. It could be a great book for even new readers, something that you can sit and read together. And I think it brings up opportunities to have some really important discussions about feelings and about change, especially in the world that we live in now. But even outside of that, I think this book really speaks to the importance of taking a moment, taking perspective, and allowing room for big feelings.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you, Renee, the Exceptional Maggie Chowder.